Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are here this evening. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Depends the part of the globe you are following us from, and this moment we want to talk about this. A program would have bring up yesterday, but issues beyond our own control couldn't allow us to get that done. But we're here once again because we need to get this topic trashed out so that people will understand what we are talking about. People will appreciate the fact that things are seriously happening, and most people tend not to really understand that things are really happening, and that is exactly what we want to discuss this evening. We want to talk about it. We want to bring it to limelight so that people will appreciate, not just only appreciate, people will get access to the real happening. Because when one is not informed, he's deformed. No two ways about it. But when you understand what actually is happening, when you understand things that are playing out within your environment, you will now have a sound precautionary measure to checkmate all those threats around. And that is exactly what we are going to look at this moment. But before we go ahead, I would love to confirm from you if you're receiving us loud and clear. If you're receiving us loud and clear, if I'm coming out loud, very, very important we will understand that. If I'm coming out loud and clear, then we'll have no other option than to proceed to get the whole thing, analyze this moment. Very, very important. So you confirm from us, from your own end, if we are, if you're receiving us loud, if you're receiving us loud and clear. Then if you're getting doubt, yes, okay, we'll now move ahead. So we are talking about the ongoing Islamization, the ongoing jihad that is just happening around the places, and it's been a worry not just to those who are inhabiting the geographical expression known as Nigeria. It's been a threat to the world. It's been a threat to humanity. It's been a threat to even divinity. Not necessarily a threat to divinity anyway, because nothing can be a threat to divinity. But what we are trying to say is that the ongoing jihad, the ongoing Islamization, the ongoing Fulanization is a reality. It's just a reality. It is a reality. And it's not just happen like that. It's not something that just one could say it just happened like that. No, it has a lot of connectivities, and those connectivities are the thing we are going to try as much as possible this evening to give you a factual presentation, a factual evidences of letting you know what is coming from where, so that you will understand that there is nothing coincidental in the whole development you're seeing in Nigeria. There's nothing accidental. Everything is happening as planned, and that is just it. That is just the way it is. So I said something. I talked about, if you read the topic we are discussing this evening, we are talking about Sudan and Nigeria, and what actually is the correlation. But I will tell you, we are not here this evening to discuss similarities only. We are here to expose to you, to your eyes, the propeller, the strong propeller that is projecting the whole Islamization agenda you're seeing happening in Nigeria. We are going to bring to your knowledge, to your understanding, various developments, how the whole thing have been developing to where we are. You would agree with me that Sudan have been, in fact, I'm taking time to get that, to get a clear evidence on that anyway. But from the research I've been making for a couple of days now, I realized that when Nigeria got her independence in 1960, please carefully follow so that you will understand the whole thing on ground. When Nigeria got her independence in 1960, the first place she opened her foreign mission is in UK. And the second place she opened her foreign mission is in US. And of course, arguably, the third place she opened her foreign mission is Sudan. I repeat, immediately Nigeria got her independence, the first place she opened her foreign mission is in UK, followed by US, then Sudan. Now, equally important for me to let you know that the opening of Nigeria foreign mission in UK, which was the first one, was as a result of colonial affiliation. UK being, the mother of Nigeria, for the fact that she colonized Nigeria. So we could as well see sense for the, place of UK as the first choice of Nigeria foreign mission. Now the second place being US. We understand that as of 1960, in fact, after the end of the Second World War, US became a hegemon. US became a major player in international politics. And as such, any country that wants assistance from US would as well rush and open foreign mission in US. So that is justified, that we can as well say US foreign mission being the second choice of Nigeria foreign mission is as a result of economic and defense purposes. One can arguably, stretch on that line. Now, why is Sudan the third? That is a question each and every one of us we answer ourselves at this moment. Why did Nigeria choose Sudan as the third destination for our foreign mission? And the answer of this question is all we are going to dwell throughout this program, so that you understand that the game you're seeing today, what you're seeing today, never started today. What you're seeing happening today, the Islamization, the jihad, whether they told you they are terrorists or not, the truth remains that they are all jihad. They work in understanding. You understand me? So why did Nigeria choose Sudan as the third foreign mission destination? This is what we are going to ask. First of all, I want to tell you that Sudan and Nigeria have almost the same composition, in the sense that Sudan is not, I'm talking about the old Sudan, not necessarily the new, where we have Sudan and South Sudan. I'm talking about the old Sudan, when South Sudan have not, gotten their independence out of Sudan. I'm talking about the old Sudan before 2005. So, now, Sudan, Nigeria chose Sudan as a third destination of her foreign mission because of religious purpose. Most Nigerian Muslims, I said most, I didn't say few, I didn't say some, most Nigerian Muslim scholars or Muslim fanatics, they all trained in Sudan. Sudan have been a destination for sponsorship, for scholarly exposure, for fanaticism exposure of Muslims in Africa. Sudan is known for funding a lot of jihadist group. Call it Al-Qaeda. Most of us don't know that even Sudan have in their midst, once had in their midst, once accommodated hospitably Osama bin Laden. Yes, go and make a research. So Sudan was chosen by Nigerian, the post-independent Nigerian elites, especially from the north, because they have been driving the foreign policy on religious ground, because most of them are products of Sudan. They went there to be exposed on jihad. They went there to be exposed on how to be Muslim clerics. So they have been going to Sudan, and they only go there on training as soldiers of Islam. That's why there is no core Muslim that have not passed through Sudan. That is just the way it is. There is no core Muslim, whether IBB, whether Asari Dukubo, whether you call it the late Yusuf of Boko Haram, whether you call them, just mention them. They were once students in Sudan. So that is how Sudan have influenced a lot of reasoning pattern of most Muslims you have in Nigeria. So what have they learned in Sudan? Because I told you most of Nigeria's Muslim clerics or fanatics have gone to Sudan to learn. Sudan has been a place, because Sudan have a lot of Muslim groups. If you go to Sudan, in fact, one of the common things in Sudan is that there is a flood of different Islamic sects, Wahhabism, Malakis, and name them. So there are a series of groups in Sudan, and Sudan is a typical or replicant of political Islam. Because in Sudan, let me tell you one thing. What failed in Sudan is what they are trying to see if they can achieve in Nigeria. Because something happened in Sudan, but it failed. A vision was conceived in Sudan. A project was test-run in Sudan, but it failed. And the failure is what they are trying to see if they can get that achieved in Nigeria. I'm going to show you something this very moment so that you understand. It's just like, let me just dive out a bit from point of discussion, but it's going to help us. So during the Cold War, I'm talking about when there was ideological war between the East and the West, talking about during the Cold War. America's CIA made a frantic effort to make sure that most people of the world learn the concept of capitalism. They sponsored a lot of academic works. They trained a lot of scholars, university lecturers. That was a secret operation of CIA. They trained a lot of secret university lecturers, trained a lot of public opinion makers, social commentators to think towards capitalism. And the defunct USSR was equally secretly, training up a lot of intellectuals to equally mode opinion of the world on the side of socialism. So it was a kind of trying to make you think the way they think. So most of these guys, most Nigerian Muslims who went to Sudan and they acquired Sudan radical approach to Islam, radical approach of Islam, or Sudan version of Islam. When they came back here, they want to replicate, and they want to indigenize that Sudan version of Islam into the system. And what actually is Sudan version of Islam? That is what we are going to be showing you up. You know, Sudan, like I said, the old Sudan is made up of the south and the north. And up north there, you see, you see a high concentration of Muslims at the up north in Sudan, Then down south, you see Christians. And that was exactly how the old Sudan was. It was just like what you have today in Nigeria, where you have, this is just the old Sudan. This is the old Sudan here. Now, this is the old Sudan. You can see from here, from this line to up here are high Muslim concentration. That is nothing. I'm talking about the old Sudan. This is from here you see the old northern part. Then, though this is the current map anyway, but when you come from here, these are Christians. That is why you see southern Sudan are majorly Christian part of Sudan. And the people within this angle are called Muslims, while south are Christian. So what Sudanese government did, what Sudanese government did was to initiate a project that is geared towards Islamizing the entire Sudan. What you see happening today in Nigeria is exactly the project, Sudan attempted to execute. They wanted to make sure that from north to south, that everyone is a Muslim. And what they did was to start raising a lot of sects. Carefully follow. They start raising a lot of jihadist group. Start initiating policies of this. What you see today as a visa policy is not new. In Sudan, there was a policy. I will get the name of the policy. At the time, the government of Sudan gave a policy that encourages Muslims from every part of the world to enter Sudan, because they had intention of making use of those migrants, Muslim immigrants. They have the intention of using them to conquer the southern Sudan. So when you see somebody telling you today that there's a free visa on arrival policy or free visa policy, I don't know. Only heaven knows. They are actually replicating what failed in Sudan. Do you understand me? So exactly what failed in Sudan is what they are, putting off frantic effort to see if they can achieve in Nigeria, because it failed in Sudan. The world was watching them in their madness. At a point, America came up and said, no, it failed. But what did they do? That project has failed. What they want to do is to see, because a lot of Nigerians, Muslims, including the top government officials, were all students, Sudanese, Nigerian students who got trained in Sudan. So they are in government because we're talking about political Islam. They are in government. They are trying to implement what they learned in Sudan. The vision of, they are trying to get a vision of Islamizing the entire continent. And that is what they are struggling to do. It is not, let nobody deceive you that the government is not aware of all these things. They know. The government of Sudan did it deliberately, and the government of today, that's why we are going to read similar policies we saw in Sudan that the present government is seriously implementing. So let's look at some of, we're going to look at the report of Dr. Suleiman Bado. Dr. Suleiman Bado he has dwelled extensively in research on Sudan, on Islam in Sudan. So he's a scholar, and in fact, he has an international reputation as a result of his tireless effort to write on Sudan and the spread, the spread of Islam. Let's see what the man said in this one of his quotation. Now look at what he said. He said, historically, the Sudanese regime had ties to international terrorist actors like Al-Qaeda and Hamas in the 1990s, which promoted jihad. Currently, it tolerates radical Islamist groups and clerics, allowing them to spread violent ideologies, including those of the Islamic State group and other international terrorist groups. Some of the extremists, take note of those red lines. It says some of the extremist groups that the regime allows to operate freely in Sudan are involved in recruiting followers within Sudan for international terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State group, Boko Haram actively in several countries in West and Central Africa, and the Somalia Al-Shabaab group. In considering these factors and the future of bilateral ties with Sudan, Sudan regional and international interlocutors and USA leaders should factor for the Sudanese regime's extremist orientation and long history of mass killings, and what have you. So from what Dr. Suleiman said here, you understand that a lot of terrorist organizations that are operating in Sahel, that are operating in North Africa, that are operating in East Africa, that are operating in Sub-Sahara region, they are all trained in Sudan. I'm not the one saying this, is the submission of Dr. Suleiman Bado. They are all trained in Sudan. And that's why the likes of Asali Dokubo sometimes told you, if you can remember, that he equally trained along with Yusuf, the founder of the late Yusuf, who is the founder of Boko Haram, that he concurrently trained with him in Libya and Sudan. So you can understand the understanding that most of these guys who are in government today are agents, if not members, of a lot of international organizations that is not known to you, because most of them make a background check. Most people in Nigeria government have exposure towards Sudanese version of Islam, which is a radical Islam. So because they are in government, all they think is how to use the state power, the government power, to project Islam. So when you oppose it, you are molded with state power. So you understand how it happens. So these are some of the things that actually happen. But because people in this part of the world are busy chasing shadow, things are not happening, contrary to their expectations. So what am I trying to say? From what we just read, you will now agree with me that most international terrorist groups are operational in Sudan. They got assistance in Sudan. They had their funding from Sudan. They have their orientations from Sudan. And somehow, majority of Nigerian Muslims, especially of northern extractions, most of them, majority of them, in the army, in DSS, in the presidency, in the legislature, in the judiciary, have gone to Sudan to learn about radical Islam. And no wonder you see them today, government, even those in the judiciary, are calling for Sharia, because they understand how Sudan wanted to Islamize the entire Sudanese until the war stood up and stopped them, you know. So let's see some of the crimes of Sudan, which is still happening today. Some of the crimes of Sudan, according to Dr. Mohammed Bado, he said, I think you can read along with me. He said, at this pivotal time, the regime attacks on Christians have included the demolition of multiple churches. Demolition, one of the approach of Sudanese government against Christians was demolition of churches, and you can see that happening. Let me say something about that. Demolition of churches in Kaduna is happening, in Borno, in Zamfara, in Katsina, in Sokoto is happening. Now, the difference between how Sudan went about it and how the Nigerian Muslims are going about it is this. Why Sudanese government did it openly? In Nigeria, they are using proxies. Boko Haram is being used to do that for them. Fulani herdsmen is being used to do that for them. You see, most places, whenever they attack a Christian-dominated community, they destroy the church, forcefully ejected the people from their land, and occupy. You understand the strategy? And while they are doing this, the government is not putting any of them to question. Nobody is being arrested. Nobody is being repelled. No security agent repels them. So the difference between that of Sudan is that the Sudanese government was directly involved, but that of Nigeria, Nigerian government is indirectly involved. That's why the government can never go after rampaging Fulani terrorists. The government cannot, come to the rescue of highly persecuted northern Christians, because they understand that it happened in Sudan. They were taught that that is part of the approaches of jihad, and that they are implementing. So let's read ahead of what Dr. Suleiman Bado said. Now, apart from demolition of the churches, he said, they destroy structure. The destroyed structures include at least one incident immediately following the departure of Archbishop of Canterbury, Louis Blob, who had visited Sudan in early August to discuss church demolition and announced that Sudan would become the world's newest Anglican communion. The Sudanese regime recent attacks have also involved the arrest and interrogation of numerous clergy members and parishioners resisting the Sudanese government attempts to seize control of church buildings and land. So you could see in Sudan, they attack churches, they arrest clergymen, and same equally happens in Nigeria. We have seen cases where they have arrested men of God, trying to bully them, trying to intimidate them, harass them, put them, especially the vocal ones. Some of them too, they use money, flash excessive money on their face and buy them over. They become redundant and dumb than you expected. So this is exactly what happened in Sudan that most of these guys are trying to replicate. They went to Sudan and learned a concept how jihad ought to be pursued, and that is exactly what they are doing today. It's not a coincidence. It has nothing to do with the end of the world for some of the gullible Christians. This is a strategy at hand. Let me shock you. Do you know that in sometime early 1990s or late 1980s, Sudanese government adopted what we call open door policy. Do you know what that open door policy? The open door policy is exactly immigration policy you're seeing today in Nigeria. And what was that open door policy? They mandated all the Muslims from all over the world to come to Sudan without visa. Just land and leave. It was at that time that Osama bin Laden went to Sudan to live. And what was the reason for that open door policy of Sudan? Because they wanted a numerical strength. They want more influence of Muslims in Sudan to enable them to conquer the Christian South. Is it happening today? Of course, it's happening. How is it happening? It is called visa on arrival policy and borderless policy in the north. They are now allowing them to walk in hundreds and millions. So it's not new. They learned it in Sudan. Let me show you what Dr. Suleiman Bado said about the open door policy of Sudan, so that you will understand that nothing is new. Now look at what he said. He said, starting in the early 1990s, different Salafist groups began to make their presence felt in Sudan. In the wake of the application of the open door policy that the regime of President al-Bashir introduced shortly after taking over in mid-1989. Under that policy, the regime welcomed to Sudan, among other extremist groups from the Arab Muslim world, Osama bin Laden and hundreds of his battle-hardened supporters, the Arab Afghans, after the 1992 to 1996 phase of civil conflict in Afghanistan. Do you now understand what actually is happening? So when you see what is happening, somebody saying that they can come, the borders are open in the north, is not new. Sudan did it. They learned that. It's called open door policy. It was implemented in Sudan, and that paved way to the influence of a lot of terrorists from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, including Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden used that opportunity of that open door policy to enter Sudan and hatched a lot of terrorist plans against Israel, against the United States, and against Western societies. And today, same is being done in Nigeria. Do you know what? A lot of terrorists are finding their ways to Nigeria through the policy, the current open door policy of Nigeria, which is a replication of what these guys saw in Sudan. That will pave way for influx of terrorists in Nigeria, and you might be gullible not to accept this or see it as one of those talk shows or whatever. Do you know that same decision fine-tuned America's decision to stop visa issuance to Nigerians? Because organized societies are not stupid. They understand the impact of the open door policy as being operational in Nigeria. They understand that terrorists can, in order to undo American homeland security system, that the terrorists might fly to Nigeria, from Nigeria, and go into America to attack them. So what America did is to cut short. They are not stupid. So with what you're saying today, because al-Bashir's government, the ousted al-Bashir's government, adopted that policy with intention of, having a lot of jihadists to come in to help them and conquer the southern Sudanese, who are Christians. So he needed more hands. And today, that is exactly what is playing out. Somebody needs more hands in Nigeria in order to unleash hell on the non-Muslim Southerners. So that is how it has been happening. Why are we saying this to you? Why are we making you to have this knowledge? So that you will understand what is playing out. You will understand that if you don't guide yourself with knowledge, if you don't understand the various techniques playing out, you will just be fooled, and it will destroy you. Because what you need at this moment is knowledge. Because the enemy is already advancing. Very, very important. So let's see something. Thank you, Mazi Cletus Jr. So let's see something. I'm quoting. Remember, these expressions are works of Dr. Suleiman Bado. Now let's see something he said. He said, in September 1983, then Sudanese President Jafar al-Nimeri, who had power from 1969 to 1985, issued a decree that came to be known as the September Laws, that made Islamic Sharia law and jurisprudence the sole legal system in Sudan. A movement known as the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, SPLM, had in previous months launched a rebellion in southern Sudan and gained strength in its opposition, to the September Laws. Let me explain something here, very, very important, before we read further. These guys believe when they try a concept and no one challenges them, they activate second one, and they keep doing it until they perfect their system. So what am I trying to say? In September 1983, the then Sudanese president, that is Jafar al-Nimeri, decided to initiate this. Remember, Sudan I'm talking about is the old Sudan, and the old Sudan have, you see, the northerners are Muslims, the southerners are Christians, and he initiated that the only law that will govern the country will be Sharia. You understand me? And what happened? The southern Sudanese, who are Christians, rebel. They form a rebel group known as Southern People's Liberation Movement, because they could not tolerate it. Now, look at one amazing thing. I think we have a lot to learn from these people. The Southern Sudanese who are Christians. When September laws were formed, which see Sharia as the only legal system in Sudan, the old Sudan. Now, the Christians in Sudan never prayed only. They never demonstrated only. What did they do? They formed a rebel group. And if you read further, you will discover that SPLM, it is the rebel group that succeeded, in, removing Southern Sudan from Old Sudan. And today they are an independent country, Christian independent country. And mind you, these people you see are not pagans. They are Christians. They didn't only pray. They didn't only protest or do a walk of prayer, as some persons said that is the best thing to do. They formed a militia group because they understood the barbaric nature of their brothers in the north. They formed a front to withstand and oppose their madness. And did it pave way for them? Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Through that rebellion posture or front, South Sudan got her independence. Now, when they posed, let me show you something. When the Christians in South Sudan rebelled against that Sharia law as initiated in the September laws, do you know what happened? Let's read together. Very, very important. Now, look at what happened. Immediately after taking power in Khartoum in 1989, the Sudanese regime responded to the threat of secular state spearheaded by the SPLM by declaring the war in southern Sudan a jihad. Do you understand me? Or holy war, propelling to the forefront the religious factor in Sudan's civil war, which had not previously been used as a central means of division and force adjustment. You cannot see. Immediately the Christians in South opposed that September laws, which is to remove secular laws and put Sharia law. The president al-Bashir, I told you earlier before they have asked all the Muslims to come in, and Osama bin Laden, of course, was on ground then. So immediately the Christians said, no, why are you changing the constitution? Our society is a secular society. Why are you telling everyone that what we have, just the way Mohammed Tanko is now agitating strongly for the reasonable place of Sharia in Nigeria constitution, and a lot of Christians are just sleeping. Now, when the constitution was about to be changed from secular constitution to Sharia law, when the Christians in southern Sudan opposed that, fought against that, do you know what happened? The president now declared jihad on the southern Sudanese. They declared jihad and asked all the Muslims from all over the world. Some Nigerian Muslims traveled to Sudan for the fight. Yes, so many of them went there to join the jihad war. And it was at that moment that, of course, America could not just sit idle and watch. And America now pronounced a strong interest. So what am I trying to say? They tried in Sudan to get everyone Islamized, They tried in Sudan to see how to get everyone to be under Sharia law. It never worked. They never succeeded. And today they are test running that seriously in Nigeria to see if that can happen. But do you know what? Let me shock you. They understood the mistake they made in Sudan. I will explain to you. And that mistake they made in Sudan was to declare jihad against the Christians, because immediately they declared the jihad, America said, okay, we are not interested. Israel said, we are not interested. America and Israel were strongly arming the southern Sudanese, who are Christians, against the northern. And beyond how the Muslim North expected it, the war became so costlier than they expected. They couldn't win the war. And today, southern Sudan is a sovereign state of Israel. So they understood that the mistake they made in Sudan was to declare jihad, was to pronounce with their mouth jihad. So in Nigeria factor, they are doing everything possible not to allow the world, or you and I, to see the religious face of this war that is ongoing. They don't want you to see it as a religious war. The government is bullying newspaper, media houses, trying to, share them away from giving a religious narrative over what. You understand me? The government is lobbying heavily in Western countries, trying immensely for you and I not to start thinking that, man, this is a religious war. They don't want the world to see it from that perspective, so that they do their work neatly, get everybody conquered secretly underground. And before anyone could realize, we are all before their knees. They don't want that, because they understand that immediately they declared jihad in Sudan, that they lost the war, they lost the battle, because America entered, Israel entered, and they lost the battle. So what they are doing in Nigeria today is to make sure you don't see it as a religious war, to make sure you don't see it as a jihad, to make sure the world doesn't even see it from that perspective. That's why all they are doing is to make sure they give it a headers farmers narrative. And if you remember, the president was speaking a few days ago. He said that nobody should say Christians are being killed, that after all, Muslims are the ones being killed more than the Christians. So they are doing everything possible to remove the eyes of the world from giving it a religious correlation, to, from presenting it as a jihad, because they understand that immediately they open their mouth to announce that, they will fall less than 1 week, just the way the arrogant Sudanese government failed in South Sudan. So they understand that. So they are now working on your pastors, on your reverend fathers, on your so-called Christian Association of Nigeria, trying to make them to talk less, paying huge amount of bribes to a lot of your so-called DGOs and all this, to make sure nobody talks about religious face of the battle, which is the real face of the ongoing crisis, ongoing killings in Nigeria. Check places they are killing people in North, they are killing in Christian-dominated areas, not in Muslim-dominated areas. But the government does not want that, because they don't want international intervention. So do you now understand how it is? So what are we trying to say? What we are trying to say this evening is that what is happening now, the ongoing jihad, is not coincidental. It's just real. It is real, just the way you who is listening to this program, as real as you are, so the project is. Take that to the bank. But let me now show you something that is gonna likely presumably where the whole thing is going to land. Let me say this. In their arrogancy, the world is watching. make no mistake about this, in their stupidity, the international community is watching. And the worst thing that ever happened to them, I will explain to you all these things so that you understand. The worst thing that have ever happened to them internally is the place of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and IPOB. And the worst thing that have ever happened to them internationally is the present United States president and the present Prime Minister of the State of Israel. These three forces, talking about Nnamdi Kanu, which is the most domestic obstacles they are facing. The external obstacle is US president and Israel. Now, before I go to detail, before I break down how these guys are posing a strong threat to, Islamic expansion in sub-Sahara region. Sudan, like I said, have been funding these guys, have been throwing money, and the world understand. Let me tell you this: the world understand, and the world felt that if they are stopped, if their madness is stopped in South Sudan, that they were going to rethink. That was what the world felt. That was what the Western world felt. That if we push our military and push them out of Darfur region, push them out of South Sudan land, that maybe they will rethink, understand they have limitation to their expansionist mindset. But do you know what? After they are lost on South Sudan, al-Bashir, the former president of Sudan, never gave up. The various Muslim or Islamic groups in Sudan who are exporting terrorism all over the world never gave up. They were still disturbing Eritrea. In Somalia, they were still funding Al-Shabaab. In Nigeria, they were still funding. Al-Bashir's government was still funding Boko Haram, flooding arms all over the Sahel. The world felt, this man has not learnt his lesson in South Sudan. Do you know what? They started planning for his removal, and you know how that happened, and Al-Bashir was removed. And you will understand how strong, how influential Sudan is in the mind of Nigerian Muslims. When Al-Bashir came to Nigeria, he was under international criminal court arrest warrant. Do you know that the Nigerian government snubbed Americans' plea for his arrest? Because he felt at home. He was afraid traveling outside Sudan, because he felt Interpol could arrest him for him to go and answer the crimes against humanity which he committed in Darfur region and other parts of South Sudan. So he was very careful not to travel. But when it came to him traveling to Nigeria, he came because he understood that in Nigeria he will feel at home, because there are a lot of Nigerian Muslims who are under the influence of Sudanese clerics. So what the world did, hence he refused to learn his lesson in South Sudan. The world now think about his removal, and today his removal. Of course, his removal affected a lot of things to Nigeria, because he has been a life wire at which Nigeria Jihad have been funded, sponsored, and given a lot of, access to equipments. Yes, I'm talking about Al-Bashir's regime. So today, he's no more. His regime is no more. And the world is now concerned with the current development in Nigeria. You can see America is every day initiating a lot of policies on religious freedom and persecution. And I think what I want to say should go directly to those in government, because I think what they think is really quite different from reality. The current regime is afraid of anything about international intervention. EU have demanded for intervention to come and help. They said to EU, no, we don't need you to come in. America have equally given a body sign showing interest to come and help. They said no, because they know what they are doing. Same applies to Israel. And if you follow what is the language of the president while addressing ECOWAS meeting, he said he's happy that ECOWAS have brought their resources together to fight insurgents. So he wants not a foreign fighters. He does not want the West to come and help out. Rather, he wants a group he can take charge and control where they will be interested to fight on. But let me say something. Jihad or religious persecution is different from terrorism. Two different things. When a country is ravaged with terrorism, it becomes a sole responsibility of the ravaging country to demand for external help. I will explain. Sorry, the light is coming on and off, but we must continue. So what am I trying to say? It's very, very important you understand what I want to explain. It's very, very important. When a country is ravaged by terrorism, that country can decide to say, okay, I want to manage it by myself. I want to handle the situation by myself. I mean, when that country is ravaged with terrorism. For instance, in Philippines, for those of you who are viewing from Philippines, Filipinos government is facing terrorism in one part of Philippines, and they are the ones fighting it. Country B cannot say, Philippines, we are coming to fight your terrorist challenge. Same applies to other countries that are facing terrorism. So when a country is, being ravaged by terrorism, that country can make it a domestic affair. And no country can come and say, I must come and help you and fight. No, excuse me. It's a domestic affair in most cases, like places I have cited. But when that problem is not terrorism, but a religious persecution, is no longer a domestic problem of a host country. It becomes an international problem, because United Nations Charter, United Nations articles demands for international responsibility wherever there is a religious persecution. So in Nigeria's case, Nigeria understands that if she keeps saying that Boko Haram, Fulani militia, that is activities of bandits listed, that the world will not be much interested to intervene, and no country can come and intervene in another country to fight bandits or terrorists, except that country say, come and help. No country can do that. So Nigeria is trying to say No, it's not. It's a banditry. It's activities of the bandits. It's activities of the terrorists. So EU, if you want to come to our rescue, just send us money, or probably give us some arms. You understand me? US, if you're interested, send us money to fight it. They understand that any day that the ongoing jihad is seen as a religious persecution, America needs not to obtain permission from Nigeria to intervene. Under international law, America have the right, which we know as responsibility to protect, to intervene and protect the religious persecuted people. And that's why America understands that jihad is ongoing in Nigeria. America understands that the more they delay, the more things are damaging. And that's why in Trump's meeting, I wish I could get that clip. In Trump's meeting, it was made explicitly to the Nigerian president by Trump of, the ongoing persecution of Christians. Trump told him explicitly when the president visited United States. On joint press statement, Trump said that religious persecution, the persecution of Christians in Nigeria cannot be tolerated. Sharply, the president wanted to counter that by saying there is no religious persecution, that Christians are not persecuted. Rather, it was farmers, herders clash. So they are doing everything possible because they understood the mistake they made in Sudan by declaring jihad. They are doing everything to make sure that this ongoing jihad is not giving religious face. Because when that happens, America, the Western world, the international community have the mandate, the right to start bombing without even looking at the concept of sovereignty. Because at that moment, under the law of responsibility to protect, has been, drafted by Canada, America cannot enter without, that's their rubbish protocol and their permission seeking. And that's why America understands what is happening. If you follow what America is doing currently, America is doing everything humanly possible to make the world understand that what is happening in Nigeria is not terrorism, rather religious persecution. So, do you know what is happening? Having been exposed, when Nasrallah now realized that America have really understood what is happening, when Asrokuna realized that damage is done, that their secret is open, as a result of a lot of campaign Mazenam the Kali is carrying out, a lot of campaigns IPOBians are carrying out. Do you know what Asrok did? They are now coming back to do some homeworks. And what is that homeworks? As I speak to you, they will be meeting a lot of Christian bodies, meeting a lot of, so-called popular men of God. They will start lobbying them and say, give a press statement that what is happening is not religious persecution. If you listened a few days ago, a group called Northern Calm was saying that people should talk less so that the activities of the criminals will not divide Christians and Muslims who are living peacefully. So there is a heavy underground work, internal work, domestic work. Sorry, the light is coming on and off, but we must continue. So there's a heavy lobbying, there's a heavy pressure for those at home, Christians at home, to start speaking to America that we are fine, no, nobody is persecuting us, nobody is killing us, all is well. And If that is done, believe you me, that would be the worst experience Christians in Nigeria will ever seen. Because American government is playing the card of religion persecution, which automatically gives them the right to come in and protect the religious oppressed. And we know that nobody can stop them. It doesn't matter whether what I'm saying is in line or not. Hold your opinion to yourself. The truth remains, they must intervene. It must. Washington, D.C. is heavily playing that card. State Department, right? Department of State is strongly playing that card. And a lot of people are beginning to see it from that angle, religious persecution. And that is where all of us
the army has arrested
hold Mazi Nnamdi Kanu a great tax. Whether you subscribe to the concept of Biafra or not. But at least his ability to mainstream this issue to the extent that the jihadists are on defensive is worth appreciating. Very, very important. So what are we saying this evening in nutshell? What we are saying this evening in nutshell is that what you're seeing in Nigeria is a replication of a failed project in Sudan. Yes, it was a first project. It failed. And believe you me, it's going to fail in Nigeria. It doesn't matter how you see it. All that is important is that there's a serious underground work that will stand as a clog to this project. Yes, if the opposition is going to come from Khan, I would have said they will succeed, because most of your so-called clergymen and women are money mongers. I owe nobody any apology. But for the fact that IPOB is on the front of opposing this evil plan, believe me, it's going to fall. And finally, before we come to the end, I think we have spent 1 hour 7 minutes. Finally, before we come to the end of this evening program, you should understand that there is a change of game within the Middle East region. Middle East region I'm talking about some of us say Arab world, but they are not really. It's not, Middle East is not really dominant. It's not really an Arab region, because you have the Persians, the Iranians are Persians, the Gulf states there. We have a high concentration of Arabs. We have the Kurdish people, we have the Turks, and we have the Jews, you know. But I'm talking about this region. That is the last thing I will say before we come to the end of this evening program. There is a change, and that change is really going to be on the disadvantage of the Nigerian jihadists. What is this change? Earlier, before now, the Arab world, or I won't say Arab world, the Muslim world, yes, Muslim countries have been in a strong opposition against the state of Israel. Israel found herself in the midst of people who wouldn't want her to survive. Nigeria was part of the project. So are many Muslim countries scattered all over the world. But today, there is a strong change. And that change is going to be on the damaging part to the Nigerian government. What is that change? As I speak to you, before now, Sudan used to be a very strong anti-Israel society. In fact, some of the attacks launched against the launched against America, launched against the West, launched against Israel were hatched in Sudan. But today, as I speak to you, there is ongoing normalization of relationship between the Sudanese government and the state of Israel. In fact, some days ago, the representative of the Sudanese government and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met in Uganda, and for first time they discussed extensively. And this is what Nigeria government does not want to hear. Nigeria government does not want to see Israel normalizing with all these Muslim countries. And as I speak to you, the Saudi crown prince, who is going to succeed the father, the Saudi crown prince, is likely to meet with Israeli Prime Minister in Cairo, in Egypt. If that doesn't happen this week, before this week ends, it's going to happen next week. You understand me? Same in Oman. Israeli Prime Minister have been in Oman, and there was a tete-a-tete discussion. Same is happening in UAE, talking about Dubai. Israeli top officials have been flying in. In fact, recently, Saudi allowed Israel to use her airspace. This is something that Israel was denied of for over 4 or 5 decades, But today, Israeli aircrafts can use Saudi airspace, and same in Sudan. So, what are we trying to say? There is a change. There is review. Most Arab countries are beginning to wake up to the fact that they need Israel in their dream for a better future. Most of them are beginning to pull out from religious dogmatism and the conservatism, which have been a clog to the will of their progress. But it's only Nigeria that we are still having crude, unrefined, barbaric, outdated, backward, and above all, beast-like Muslims who believe to keep on unleashing hell to non-Muslims in the name of God. You can't appreciate what is happening. So, with the new development in Israeli foreign policy, in the Arab world or Arab countries' foreign policy, if my commission or mission, Nigeria miscalculatively go into war, the assistance they got in 1967 to 1970 will be hardly sought for. And believe you me, take that to the bank, they will never get it. So if Abuja is wise, which I think, I don't know if they will ever come across this program. If Abuja is wise, they should decommission any iota of thought of war with any part of the contraption that is considering self-determination for their own good. They should delink, they should decommission, and above all, they should jettison any idea of belligerency, bellicosity, and warfarism, because it's not going to help them, because the world is changed. that brings us to this evening program anyway. I think I have to appreciate every one of us that joined us, be with us, and patiently stay till this moment. It's not easy. It's not easy because I understand our tight schedule because of the forthcoming burial on Friday. I understand how tightly in terms of engagements every one of us are, but despite that we made it. So I appreciate you, and I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. So from here I want to say good night. Keep on preserving us. Bye.